It is impossible to exaggerate the importance of science to this country, historically and currently. Chemistry alone is worth £50 billion a year to the British economy right now. The prestige value simply cannot be measured. Britain has just 1% of the world's people, but produces, by one reckoning, 14% of the most frequently cited scientific papers. That is a staggeringly disproportionate total and ought to be a source of pride to every single person in the country. And yet science seems to be under a strange and relentless attack at the moment. Many of you will be familiar, a few of you may even yet sting, from an extraordinary broadside by Simon Jenkins in The Guardian earlier this summer against science and its costs. He seemed to think that modern science is somehow a great scam. And of course, we are in the shadow of a looming spending cuts which are expected to hit science and research hard. Frankly, I find that really disappointing. The glory of this country, the thing I admire more about it than any other, is that in a really small space, you produce an amazing amount of wonderfulness here, in theater, music, art, literature, science, and a great deal else. If you take away men's tennis and World Cup football, you are really fantastic at everything. It would be a foolish tragedy to throw away any of that glorious, unpredictable abundance of creative activity in any of those fields, science not least, because we somehow feel compelled to do a kind of mass penance for a brief spell of irrational exuberance by the financial world. I just don't get that. All of this was put into a certain perspective for me by an experience I had a year or so ago. You know, I'm chancellor at Durham University, and in that position, I often am taken to visit various departments. Now, one of my visits last year, they took me to the engineering department to see one of their new toys, something called a radio frequency anechoic chamber. They explained to me that essentially it's just a soundproof chamber. And I thought, well, how interesting can that be? And then I got there and saw it and thought, well, not very, evidently, because it really was just a soundproof chamber with foam baffles. It looked exactly like a radio broadcast booth, only slightly roomier, but it really didn't look anything much at all. But what I learned is that in the hands of the amazingly dedicated and cerebrally supercharged people in Durham's engineering department, this dull chamber may one day perform miracles. By allowing engineers to control radio waves at ever finer resolutions, it could change the world in 100 ways. It could provide a means to detect breast cancer so early that it never ever kills anyone again. Or find people who are lost in the wilderness if they're carrying a mobile phone, even if it's switched off. Or let firemen look through walls and see who's trapped inside burning buildings. And a whole lot more. And all this exciting potential is contained in just one small chamber in one corner of one department of one university, which is, of course, just one of 114 British universities, all doing dedicated research. And that's not to mention all the industrial and NHS and charitable research labs and so on, all of them doing interesting and exciting things, any one of which could fundamentally change the world. The idea that any of that is expendable or surplus to requirements is simply bizarre.